Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is a special episode involving influencers and essential travel, where we're going to talk about the potential ramifications for those influencers who are currently in Dubai and maybe Mexico and wherever else they may be at this moment in time. Essential travel is not a legal term, and the whole coronavirus guidance and law is quite confusing at best. But what matters is that reasonable excuse for you to be allowed to leave your home for purposes of work, which is the whole point of this video. And this is enshrined in, thankfully I did not have a tongue-twisted time moment in this take, under the health protection brackets, coronavirus restrictions, close brackets, regulations 2020, specifically regulation 6 subsection 2F. And the whole issue of reasonable excuse is a very factor-based test. Depending what type of influencer you are, what type of products you're showcasing, this legislation may enable you to leave the country for those purposes. However, it's not a carte blanche. You cannot go on to Dubai for months on end. Additionally, you have to prove that when you've gone to Dubai, that if tested, that you've gone for business purposes, i.e., look at how many posts I've done with this wonderful bag, shoes, or event, or something like that, that corresponds to my brand. And here are the contracts to prove that I have done this work for a monetary sum, which will offer some sort of protection. It won't offer you protection if you're spending more than, I'd say, a considerable amount of time just laying about and enjoying yourself. There needs to be a commercial thrust to it. Social media influencers depend heavily on sponsors, and the sponsors that ask to be associated with them and have their merchandise placed within their sphere of influence or their posts will have drafted a contract. And in that contract, it would state, obviously, whatever product that's given to that social media influencer, how it should be showcased and when. But there is an additional clause, and that additional clause, or there should be an additional clause, that clause should state that depending on how the social media individual interacts with general society or says something in their posts that may harm the brand or the way that the brand is utilized in their posts, the sponsor can claw back their money that they've given to them or stop paying any money that's due to them or end the contract. And that's a very sensitive and interesting point, especially with the recent backlash, especially from TV, newspapers and general social media from influencers who are just going to Dubai or other wonderful places just for fun and pretending it's work and showing off that they are enjoying their lives rather than actually doing their work, which in turn, the brand that's associated with them is being damaged. So there is an interesting contractual breach and almost a tortious situation where the brand that's being that's entangled, or rather that has an association with a certain influencer, may seek some sort of remedy or some sort of finances to cut ties or recoup some of the damages that they've incurred. The tax ramifications for social media influencers, firstly, do seek tax advice from an accountant. But generally speaking, depending how long you stay in a place, especially if that place has its air corridor closed to you, will mean as time goes on, your domicile status in the UK or in England or anywhere around the world, as time goes on, will change and may affect your tax status. Additionally, and this is quite important, is that your social media presence does, in essence, give the taxman clues of how much money you make. And if there is any indiscretions in your, how can I say, your self-assessment, your tax self-assessment, HMRC can easily find out, as it is well documented in your posts. So what unites the principles of essential travel or reasonable excuse, a specific contract provision for the protection of a certain brand, and tax liability? Well, it's evidence. Well, let's be a bit more specific. It's the evidence which someone on social media produces. Influencers, if not on a minute-by-minute basis, but rather on an hourly basis, document their lives. And that is a double-edged sword. And as long as the social media influencers can produce a strong catalogue of work demonstrating, one, that they've left the country with a reasonable excuse to produce and to create money for themselves and fits their business model, they should be fine. The next point is, by doing so, hopefully the brands that they're associated with won't have or won't feel any sort of repercussions with their associations with that influencer. Lastly, depending on the tax situation of that individual and if they have been honest in their self-assessment, they should fear nothing from HMRC. However, that won't be the case in most cases. And that is because, and I would like to put this point to everyone, and hopefully they will learn with it, is that by documenting your lives on social media, you are also documenting some of your flaws. Specifically, if you state on Twitter that in a sarcastic, without remorse way, that you're stuck in Dubai and you can't do anything else, so you're going to have to suffer in this idyllic paradise while working or having a good time rather than working, the authorities can easily source that, and that will be very difficult for you to fight. Additionally, it will harm your presence and your brand to the commercial sponsors that you have. And also, because you're stuck in this place, it may have tax ramifications. Anyway, thank you, good evening. Thank you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Goodbye.
Subscribe. Is that it? Oh, thank God I can go have a drink.